Spring 1946. Vera Frankel had never seen a sun so bright or streets teeming with so many people. Lovers held hands, teenagers zoomed by on Vespas, and old women carried shopping bags laden with fruits and vegetables. Vera smelled sweat and cigarettes and gasoline. The experience of arriving in Naples from Hungary made Vera remember the early spring days in Budapest when she was 8 years old and recovering from diphtheria. The curtains in her room had been drawn back, and she was allowed to sit outside and eat a bowl of plain soup. Nothing had ever tasted so good, and the scent of flowers in the garden was more intoxicating than her mother's perfume. All around her, people felt the same way now. The outdoor cafes overflowed with customers enjoying the espresso without fear of bombs exploding. They nodded at neighbors they had been too afraid to stop and talk to, and kissed boys returning from the front until their cheeks were raw. 11 months ago, the Allies had defeated the Nazis, and the war in Europe was over.
Welcome to the Good Reading Magazine podcast, sponsored by Pantera Press. Good Reading is a monthly magazine dedicated to books and reading and aims to help readers discover their next favourite book. You can find out more about the books discussed on today's podcast at goodreadingmagazine.com.au.
Welcome back to the Good Reading Podcast. I'm Max Lewis, and today we're joined by Australian-born, California-based author Anita Abriel, whose novel The Light After the War tells a sweeping story of love, friendship, and fate after the horror of World War II. Anita, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Max.
So what makes The Light After the War so special is that it's based on your mother's own experience in surviving the Holocaust and building a new life after the war. Are you able to tell us a little bit more about her story and how you worked it into the book?
Yes. My grandmother lived with us in Sydney. I was born and raised in Sydney. And they would speak to each other in Hungarian. And so I got a lot of the feeling of the Holocaust growing up. And my father was also a Holocaust survivor, but I didn't really know much of the story until I was about 11. And then I asked a very specific question, which I won't reveal because it might give something away. And then I learned a lot more about it. I learned how my mother and her best friend escaped on the way to Auschwitz, and other things about it that just made the story, it was a miracle that they survived, and miraculous to me being, luckily that I was there.
So you've written over 13 novels, but The Light After the War is your first foray into historical fiction. What was it like delving into that unfamiliar territory?
It was very moving. My mother died from Alzheimer's about 8 years ago, and I have dedicated every single book to her because she was a really wonderful person. And so to really dig into her life, and I didn't change any of the names in the book. And I met Edith once, her best friend, many, many years ago, actually, when we were all visiting Europe. We met in Munich when I was about 13. So it was all very, very moving to sort of delve into her past and, of course, into the whole time of the Holocaust, because it's just incredibly frightening what went on.
And given the immense historical context of the novel, as well as your own family history, which is entrenched in the book, what was the process of gathering all that research like?
I did an awful lot of research, mostly on the internet. I had some personal things, like I have her record of when they arrived at Ellis Island, and I had photos of her in Venezuela, in Caracas at the time. But I just did an awful lot of research, both in the library, but mainly on the internet of the war in Budapest and Hungary and Italy after the war, and then of course Venezuela after the war as well.
And I think those locations and the way that they come alive in the book is one of the most special parts about the book. How did you go about achieving such vivid descriptions of these locations, especially what they were like just after the war?
Thank you. That's one thing I've just always done in my writing, and all of my previous books are all set in different locations. It's kind of one of the draws, I suppose. I just really visualize while I'm writing, and I really feel like I'm there, and I think somehow I get that on the page. something that's very important to me that sort of transport the reader and myself in the book.
And in a lot of other ways, the book is, aside from a historical fiction novel, it's also a love story, with Vera falling in love not only with Captain White, but also the many places she calls home across her journey, and also the loving friendship she has with Edith. What is it about love that inspires and fascinates you as a writer?
I think that, to me, almost all stories boil down to romance in one way or another. I mean, all love stories to me are boy meets girl. You know, there's an attraction, something separates them, and then either they do get back together or don't. And that's really kind of the greatest story there is, because that's, you know, kind of what life is all about at one point or another. And then the love one feels between mother and daughter has always been extremely important to me, because I think that's a bond like no other. And the bond between women is very, very important to me, because, again, that's just a very special bond that is different and is so important in a woman's life. And it's just such a very deep bond that can last for your entire life.
Yeah, that enduring friendship of Vera and Edith is one of the book's most moving aspects, because it feels so real. Was that friendship based on any significant people in your life?
I have a best friend that I've had since high school, and we still talk, you know, almost every day, talk or text, and haven't seen each other probably in 25 years. So, yeah, that you share things with women, with girls, with friends that you don't share with other people, and they know you so well, and you can be yourself. You know, you can really be yourself with your best friend, like with nobody else, and that's, you know, very special all through life.
And so another one of the novel's major themes is that of fate, and particularly in how fate can work behind the scenes, as it were, to bring people together. Are you a big believer in fate yourself?
Yes, actually, interestingly enough, I've written before about synchronicity, which, you know, is another word, I guess, for fate, that unrelated events that can't be avoided and shape your future. And yes, I'm a big believer in fate. You just, you know, there's a plan, and it happens whether or not you want it to, very often.
Did you have any trouble working that aspect into the novel? Because some people, I guess, might believe that it's hard to work fate into a novel, especially such as this, without it seeming fantastical and kind of out of the blue.
I think I approach it as sort of a series of events. And when I write, I truly write just what's going to happen next. And I try not to look at the big picture. And I think if it follows logically, then it makes sense to me. And a lot of things in the book that happened truly happened. And so whether or not it seems, you know, fantastical, it's what happened. Because somebody said something to me, an early reader, I don't believe that. And I'm like, well, it happened. So, you know, that is what life is like. You don't believe it, but it happened.
So I guess in terms of the major plot points of the novel, aside from what instigates Vera and Edith moving to Naples and then the locations they go to after that, how much of the novel's plot is actually based in reality? Each place they go to, the reason that they go there is real. You know, it's based on the true story, and most events are real too, and especially what happens in Venezuela, which again I don't want to give it away, but yes, it's all part of the story that I heard as a child. Wow, okay. And in terms of the whole book's message, there was a particular line in the book that I felt really summed it up, and that was, "Death is everywhere, but so is life." I felt like the book really hammered home not only the devastation that World War II caused, but the strength of the human spirit, and particularly that of the Jewish people, and that strength that allowed the world to recover. Do you still feel like we have this spirit in us today?
Oh, I think absolutely, and I appreciate you noticing that, because that is what I feel. And I also, going along with that, I sort of have a a belief that beauty is very important, and beauty in anything, in flowers and trees, and in to appreciate life. That beauty is everywhere. You look up. I'm looking outside right now, and there's, I'm looking at really beautiful green trees, and that makes me happy. And so there is always life, and there is always hope. You never know what's going to happen next, and even if you're leaving behind death, there is always hopefully a tomorrow when everything can be completely different, and we never give up hope. It's part of being a human being.
Overall, what would you like readers to get out of The Light After the War? Really
two things, I guess. To really remember the Holocaust, to not forget it in small and personal ways, because it's easy to look at the big picture, and the small picture is the individuals and how they suffered, and then what they brought with them to their lives, and thus to the next generations. And then also just to really embrace life, and appreciate what we have, and never give up.
Absolutely. And was there anything else that you'd like to mention?
There will be another historical fiction after The Light After the War. So I'm pretty committed to writing the historical fiction, because I think there's so much material there, and so many wonderful stories to tell, and I can just dig deeper. So I'm very excited about that direction for my writing.
Can you give us a hint about what it might be focusing on this time around?
Nope.
Fair enough. Well, Anita, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. I'll have to wait on that one.